Alright, here we go. I will do the component build and pricing on each of the components for the mining rig. So this is the motherboard. I think I mentioned that a couple times before. Approximately costs about $99, I'd say. When you look to buy one of these, you want to make sure that you're getting one that has more of these PCI slots. The more the better. The highest one I've seen on the market right now is 10 or 11, and that's the H110 BTC motherboard. I went with one that was modest and in between with just 6, but that's still plenty. If you come over here to this other one that was with the pre-built, it it doesn't have any additional PCIe slot, so that doesn't that won't I can't use it for mining really. Okay, so moving on from the motherboard is the CPU, which is this spinny thing here. The CPU itself is actually underneath the fan. It's just a little square device, probably like that big, metal. You might need to buy thermal paste if you're installing that yourself. Most of them come with thermal paste already on there, and since you aren't using it for gaming, you don't necessarily need that to keep it cooler, because it shouldn't get all that hot. You're not really using the CPU. You are using the CPU for mining, but you're not really using it too heavily, so it's not going to get extremely hot. And the CPU is actually a pretty expensive component. That I think this one was either 109 or 129. I can't remember off the top of my head right now. So that's another about $100 we can say. And then we have this Ddr4 Ram. I just went with a really cheap one, 4 gigs. You don't need a lot. You're not using your RAM, for mining. It doesn't need you don't need to be using multiple applications at the same time, so it really isn't going to affect it, and you're not running, games, so that you don't need to worry about bottlenecking graphics cards or anything like that. Same with the CPU. You don't need a high-end CPU because you're not going to bottleneck your graphic card because you're not gaming with it. If you were going to game with let's say I had a 1080 Ti here, which is like an $800 graphics card, then the Ryzen 3 would not work well with it. It would limit your graphics card, and you'd be better off with a T50 or a 1050 Ti anyway. So, moving on to the power supply here, I have a 550. I can never say that name right, but an EVGA. They're a good brand. If you don't go with EVGA, Corsair is another very good one. And the main thing you want to look for when buying the power supply is the gold. You want to make sure that you're getting a gold edition. You don't want the copper. That's really cheap. Comes with the pre-built. I'm not exactly sure, if it's made with gold wiring or not. I would assume that's what makes it a little more expensive and a little more efficient. But they're pretty cheap. That was about $65, $70. Unless I forget. Oh, the SSD, Kingston SSD. That's I forget. I think it's 125 gig, maybe 250 gig SSD. That's your hard drive. Instead of getting the solid state, or that is the solid state. You want to get the solid state because it's quicker. The SSD, it's faster load times. You can get more memory on on a regular hard drive. If you want to get like a 2 terabyte hard drive, you could do that. I went with that option. It just seemed better for me. And that was pretty cheap too. I think that was only about $60 or $70 as well. And then you're gonna need internet, so you got to get this little Dewacre here. This is $5 or $6. There's some limitations to it. It's not very efficient when it comes to getting internet speeds through it. I think it only gets like 800 kilobytes per second upload, which is pretty awful. But so basically, when you do get that, and you start up your computer for the first time, you have to update all the drivers, and it takes a very long time because of that. But the reason I went this route, where it's a USB Wi-Fi adapter, is because if you come over here to the pre-built, it has this antenna, which is boop, 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 hooks up through your PCIe slot. It's much faster, it's much more efficient, but then you're going to be taking up a PCIe slot. And since I'm trying to, eventually I want to have all 6 slots with graphics cards in it, I don't want to be utilizing that space for faster internet, because the internet speed is not going to improve your mining. You just need a semi-decent internet connection, and you're good to go. The other thing, and that's only like, yeah, $5 or $6. The other thing you want to get is, most people have a computer or a mouse and a keyboard laying around, so I'm not even going to include that in the cost. I just used one from an old computer. You don't need anything special. These riser cables, these are kind of pricey actually. You can get them for $60. You get 6 of them for 60, so they're about $10 a piece. And all that's going to do is you plug it into your PCIe slot and it extends it away from the motherboard to keep heating down, because you don't want your motherboard to get too hot. And it also allows you to kind of put it and stage it out the way you want. It's basically just that USB comes over to here, and then your graphics card would sit in it just like a normal PCIe slot. There's a little hook on the side here that you just bloop, plop over, and you need this power connector that goes from the power supply to the riser. Now this cable here comes with the risers when you buy it, and this cable here comes with the power supply when you buy the power supply. Oh, and last but not least is the power button, the power switch button. You don't necessarily need this. I just highly recommend it. It's like $5 or $6. I think you get a couple of them. That's normally for when you're building a computer to hook up the power buttons on the top of the computer and stuff. They have the reset button. They have a whole bunch of different types of buttons that you would need. But and instead of doing it the old-fashioned way, where you would short circuit it by putting two pieces of metal together, like a screwdriver or something like that, it would short circuit it and start the motherboard. You just might as well buy a $5 or $6 button, because you're going to be turning your computer on and off quite a bit, especially when you're doing updates in the beginning and you don't want to accidentally short circuit your motherboard. Alright, that's it for now, guys. Thanks.